The 2015 Paris Agreement provides that developed countries take the lead in providing financial assistance to countries with lower gas emissions from the atmosphere in order to mitigate the effects of climate change. And out of the $3 trillion so far being invested in climate change mitigation by the developed world, Africa has only received $60 billion, although the continent emits fewer gases than developed countries. For instance, Uganda emits only 0.01% of the global emissions into the atmosphere. Yesterday, the United Arab Emirates president announced that his country would invest about $250 billion in climate change financing and pledged to start with $30 billion fund. Now, Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni says climate change financing be channeled directly to local communities so that they can take part in solving the climate change crisis.
Recently, only 10% of the climate finances reach the local level. This is unacceptable. Uganda, therefore, supports the climate finance approaches in which at least 70% of the resources are allocated to locally prioritized climate actions while empowering the last mile communities. Uganda looks forward to COP28 establishing loss and damage fund that is accessible, free from bureaucracy of multilateral development banks.
Despite the favorable climate Uganda enjoys, President Museveni says the country is facing heavy floods, landslides and mudslides, as well as prolonged drought, and the temperature are beginning to rise.
Uganda also has moderate temperatures of 19 degrees Celsius at night and 24 to 29 degrees Celsius during day. Some parts of Uganda actually have permanent snow, like Mount Rwenzori, which is right next to the equator. Uganda also has a massive plateau with large freshwater bodies, and that's why Uganda is called the Pearl of Africa. Because of recent, in some parts of the country, we have experienced floods, landslides, and prolonged drought with rising temperatures, yet the country contributes only 0.01 of the global emissions.
South Sudan President Salva Kiir Mayardit, who recently assumed chairmanship of East African Community Summit Heads of State, called on developed countries to compensate countries that emit less into the atmosphere.
I urge the developed countries to operationalize loss and damage fund so that less developed countries that are affected are compensated.
Kenya's President William Ruto rallied developed countries to avoid allocations of climate change financing based on perceived risks of individual countries.
To make sure that resources and financing is not unnecessarily denied because of perceived risk. How we will use multilateral development bank reform to de-risk resources and financing that will be made available to investments in renewable energy and in green industrialization in our continent.
If developed countries agree to President Museveni's call to allocate climate change financing directly to the local communities, what this means that East Africans and Ugandans in particular will be able to receive funds and plant trees as a measure to mitigate the effects of climate change. Jjingo Francis, NTV in Dubai, United Arab Emirates.